Welcome back to the Weightless Productivity Podcast. Today we're diving into something that might sound a little backwards at first. Send less, get less. Before we get to the good stuff, we need to acknowledge the, shall we say, unique situation we've got going on here.
Right. You probably noticed we're not our usual selves, more like our digital selves. Full disclosure, we're AI voices today.
Well, the brains behind this operation, the actual human who knows all about this. Send less, get less magic. They're kind of hiding behind the curtain like the Wizard of Oz.
Except, instead of a wise, powerful wizard, imagine someone who spends a little too much time at their desk.
I'll say, not quite winning any marathons anytime soon.
But hey, at least they cracked the code on email efficiency.
It's gotta count for something. Absolutely. All the insights you'll hear today are based on real experience and research. This isn't just some AI making stuff up. Our mission today is to help you reach that mythical inbox zero every single day. Achieve what we like to call digital serenity and become a master of what we call surgical responsiveness.
Digital serenity being that feeling of calm you get when you're not constantly bombarded by notifications and messages.
Exactly. And surgical responsiveness is all about being intentional with your communication. You're only responding to what's truly important, and you're doing it in a way that maximizes your impact. Okay, so let's get into this send less, get less idea. First glance, it seems counterintuitive. We're so used to thinking that if we want to stay on top of things, we need to be constantly sending emails, but the research suggests otherwise.
There was a fascinating study published in the Harvard Business Review that really highlights this. Executives at a company in London were trained to reduce their email output, not by little either. They focused on only forwarding essential messages, cutting down the number of people on each email, and basically choosing the absolute best way to communicate for each situation.
So it was about being really strategic with each email they sent.
Exactly. And the results were impressive. Within 3 months, the executive team's email output dropped by a massive 54%.
54%, that's huge.
But here's where it gets really interesting. The email output of the other 73 employees in the London office also started to decrease.
Wait, even though they hadn't received any training?
Exactly. Their email volume decreased even more, by 64%, in fact. This resulted in an annual gain of 10,400 man-hours. Think about that. That's a 7% increase in productivity just from sending fewer emails.
Wow. So it really had a ripple effect throughout the entire company.
Absolutely. And the new practices became embedded in the company culture. And the reductions have been sustained for 2 years. The executives weren't just sending fewer emails, they were changing the way everyone communicated.
That's a really powerful example of how our individual actions can have a wider impact. Every email we send creates work for someone else, and it often triggers a knee-jerk response. It's like a chain reaction of digital busy work.
And each time you hit send, you're creating an expectation of a response. That expectation doesn't just disappear when you clock out either, it lingers, creating this pressure even when you should be relaxing.
So true. How many times have you checked your email right before bed or on vacation? It's like we can't escape this feeling that we need to be constantly connected.
It feeds into this addiction to busyness that's become so common. We feel like we have to be constantly responding to prove we're productive. But are we really being productive? Or are we just creating more work for ourselves and others?
That's a great question. Here's an experiment for you to try at work. Send a group email with an open-ended question to a large number of people. Just sit back and watch the chaos unfold as everyone rushes to reply. It's a great way to visualize the hidden costs of email in terms of time and focus.
You'll be surprised by how much time and energy is wasted on unnecessary back and forths.
The key takeaway here is that we need to shift our mindset about how we process email. We don't need to respond to every message that lands in our inbox. We can be more selective and intentional with our responses.
Absolutely. We need to break free from that automatic response cycle and become more conscious about how we react to each email.
Responding to an email can often be a form of lazy delegation. You're essentially passing the buck back to the sender, perpetuating an endless chain of replies. It's like a game of email hot potato.
And it plays right into our psychological need to feel busy. We crave that feeling of instant gratification, of checking something off our to-do list. But constantly responding to emails can actually be a major obstacle to real progress.
It's a false sense of productivity.
Exactly.
So, what's the solution? How do we break free from this cycle of email overload and reclaim our time and focus?
Well, the bottom line is, don't send an email unless it's absolutely necessary. Think of it as your last resort. I actually have don't send email as my desktop wallpaper. It's a constant reminder to pause and consider if email is truly the best way to communicate.
That's a great idea. It's so easy to get caught up in the habit of emailing back and forth, even for things that could be easily handled with a quick phone call or face-to-face conversation.
And remember, even seemingly harmless emails like thank yous can derail focus and trigger that email addiction. Every email, no matter how small, has the potential to pull you back into that vortex of digital distraction.
So, we need to be really deliberate about our email communication. Every email we send should have a clear purpose and be crafted in a way that minimizes the chances of triggering a chain of unnecessary replies.
There are other practical tips you can implement. One of my favorites is setting specific times for checking email.
Instead of having your inbox open all day, constantly interrupting your flow.
Exactly. Try designating 2 or 3 specific slots in your day for email processing and stick to them. This not only reduces the temptation to constantly check your messages, but also allows you to approach email with a more focused and intentional mindset.
It's about taking control of your email instead of letting it control you. The key is to use email strategically and intentionally. Don't default to email for every communication, but recognize its strengths and leverage them when appropriate.
And this leads us to another important point. Recognizing when email is not the best tool for the job. If a conversation is getting complex or emotionally charged, it's often more effective to pick up the phone or have a face-to-face conversation.
Email can sometimes strip away nuance and make it harder to convey tone and intent. It's easy for misunderstandings to arise.
Absolutely. And in those situations, a quick conversation can often resolve things much faster and with less potential for conflict than a long chain of emails.
So it's about choosing the communication method that's best suited for the situation. Sometimes that means stepping away from the keyboard and opting for a more personal approach.
Exactly. It's about being mindful of your communication goals and using the tools at your disposal wisely. And remember, even when you do need to use email, there are ways to make it more efficient and less overwhelming.
Like what?
Well, one technique is to use clear and concise subject lines that accurately reflect the content of your email. This allows recipients to quickly prioritize and process their inbox.
Instead of vague subject lines like quick question or following up, which tell the recipient nothing about what to expect.
Exactly. And when composing your email, get straight to the point. State your purpose clearly in the first few sentences and avoid rambling or unnecessary details. People are busy. They appreciate emails that are easy to read and understand.
It's like the old writing adage, omit needless words. Every word should serve a purpose.
Precisely. And if you're sending an email that requires a specific action from the recipient, make it clear what you need them to do and by when. Don't be afraid to be direct. It saves everyone time and prevents miscommunications.
So we're just talking about clarity, conciseness, and a clear call to action.
Exactly. By following these principles, you can ensure your emails are effective, efficient, and less likely to contribute to that overwhelming feeling of email overload.
The key is to keep practicing and refining your approach until you find a balance that works for you.
Exactly. And be patient with yourself. Changing ingrained habits takes time and effort, but the rewards are well worth it. Imagine a workday where you feel calm, focused, and in control of your communication, rather than constantly reacting to the demands of your inbox.
That sounds like digital serenity in action.
Precisely. And remember, it's not just about individual productivity. It's about creating a more mindful and sustainable email culture for everyone.
By sending less, we can all contribute to a less chaotic and more productive digital world. So, to our listeners out there, we encourage you to embrace the send less, get less philosophy and see the difference it can make in your life. You might be surprised at how much more productive, focused, and peaceful your workday can become.
It's a ripple effect worth creating.
And that's our deep dive into send less, get less. We hope you found these insights helpful, and we encourage you to share your own experiences with us in the comments.
We'd love to hear how this principle is working for you, and any tips or tricks you've discovered along the way.
And as always, be sure to like, comment, and follow the Weightless Productivity Podcast for more tips on achieving inbox zero and living a life of digital serenity.
Until next time, stay productive.